You are listening to Viewpoints from PlaceCloud. Cultural researchers tell stories of places from around the world. For the full multimedia experience and to support the creators you enjoy, visit placecloud.io.
After the United States declared its independence from the United Kingdom on the 2nd of July 1776, Albany became the capital of the state of New York the next year. The city had already been chartered, given official status as a city in 1686, making it the oldest city in the state, after it had been named Albany when the English had taken over the colony from the Dutch in 1664. Representatives of the Dutch West India Company had jostled for influence in the region with other colonists, but eventually had managed to gain reasonably firm control of the region, also as proven by the construction of Fort Nassau and Fort Orange, the latter of which was built in the location we find ourselves in here. Now just a multi-layered concrete crossroads, in the 17th century the wealthier landowners built their mansions around the fort. This included Johanna de Laat, whose father, Johannes, was influential in shaping the actions of the Dutch West India Company. Johannes de Laat was a man whose intellect and ambition helped shape the way the world was understood in the 17th century. Born in Antwerp, he became a refugee when his family fled to Leiden after the Spanish managed to take control of the city in 1585, while also himself studying philosophy in Leiden. De Laat was a founding director of the Dutch West India Company, but his role was not confined to the boardroom. He was a scholar, geographer, and chronicler who produced a guide for the Governor-General of Dutch Brazil, Maurice de Nassau, who had accepted the job in 1636, starting the following year. One of de Laat's famous works is his Nieuwe Wereld of de Beschrijvingen van West-Indiën, or New World or Descriptions of the West Indies, where he draws on first-hand accounts and meticulous research in which de Laat detailed the geography, natural history, and indigenous cultures of the New World, painting a vivid picture for European readers hungry for knowledge of distant lands. Even more impressive for the man never having visited the New World himself. But, like a Renaissance Twitter storm, what caught the attention of a broader public was his open polemic conflict with another giant of the times, his fellow Dutchman Hugo Grotius, the father of international maritime law. De Laat wrote and published his Notae ad Dissertationem Hugonis Grotii, or Notes on the Dissertations of Hugo Grotius, in 1643, in which de Laat sharply criticized Grotius' ideas. Not his opponent's ideas on international maritime law, but a theory about the origin of Indian languages in the Americas. According to Grotius, who had little knowledge of America and American languages, the continent had been populated during a recent Germanic colonization. Grotius tried to show that all humans were descended from Adam and Eve. Their languages, Hugo de Groot stipulated, must therefore show Hebrew influences. But de Laat refuted de Groot's views on European and American linguistics. Indian languages, de Laat showed, had no affinity with Hebrew, Greek, Latin, or any modern European language. As the origin of the Americans became a topic of discussion throughout Europe, there followed another response from Grotius and a rebuttal from de Laat. In this later polemic, de Laat made an effort to make evidence-based linguistic research the basis of a thesis on the origin and kinship of languages and language families. De Laat's scientific attempts at refuting Grotius' claims on the linguistic connections between Amerindian and European languages resulted in him being seen as one of the founders of comparative linguistics. However, de Laat himself was silent on the question of where the people, animals, and plants in the New World had their origins, if others were not. Another reaction to de Laat's thinking came from the Frenchman Isaac La Peyrère. Siding with de Laat, he concluded that different human species must have different origins, with which the biblical creation story lost its explanatory monopoly on the origin of history, bringing into the public mindset the theory and concept of Pre-Adamites, peoples that were alive before Adam and Eve, and who had to have been, so the argument went, the source of the husbands of the daughters of Eve. Now, these polemic exchanges didn't quite reach the general public, as these backs and forths were typically written in Latin. The Republic of the Seven United Provinces, the core of the future the Netherlands, saw more academic and religious freedoms than elsewhere in Europe, and particularly publications that came out in dead languages were not considered for censorship, exactly because they only could have a limited public appeal. However, discussions like those between Grotius on one side and de Laat and Pereire on the other had let the genie out of the bottle concerning Bible studies, allowing for investigating the Bible scientifically, like any other ancient text, and this in a world that was slowly becoming more secular. De Laat never set foot in one of the Dutch colonies on which he had considerable influence. Besides his role as a chronicler and power player as a director of the West India Company, he was also one of the founders of the patroonship, a kind of landholdership, of Rensselaerswijk, in what became part of Albany, in the state of New York. After his death, his daughter, Johanna, inherited her father's wealth, as inheritance law in the Low Countries was significantly more liberal than in other European countries, giving equal treatment to sons and daughters, and with her husband she moved to the Americas. She settled on the lands around Fort Orange in Rensselaerswijk and became a wealthy and influential business and property owner, until the English took over the colony, when it became more difficult for women to run their own affairs, after which she chose to return to the Netherlands. Johanna died in Amsterdam in 1683, and she was buried in the Pieterskerk in Leiden, where her father had also been laid to rest in 1649. Johannes had not seen the end of Brazil as a Dutch colony, nor of that of New Netherland, the Dutch colony in roughly modern-day New York State. But Johanna had lived through both of these. Johanna, successful in business, only really still exists in transactional records, yet the scientific legacy of her father, particularly in the field of linguistics, still lives on.